And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the OFFA 2021 Virtual Film Festival. We are here and we're happy to be here. And, the rain is kind of on our side today. So we're glad that we can be indoors and virtual and meeting and watching some amazing, amazing films. Today, we are welcoming some amazing guests. But first, let me just say a couple thank yous. I just want to thank our sponsors for the festival. We have Film.ca Cinemas who brought us these films today. A big thank you to our filmmakers who are here, who tell us these stories that we are so longing to hear. So thank you to our filmmakers who bring us the art of film. Thank you all the cast and crew who bring these stories alive and interpret them in different ways. Thank you to the board, the OFFA board. You guys do so much work and it does not go unnoticed. Wendy here, she works tirelessly and she is just a superwoman and does so much for this festival to just bring awareness to the arts and bring awareness to some really important issues that a lot of these films cover. Thank you to Tori and Jen, who are behind the scenes, who always help us with the technology stuff that I'm not so great at, but we definitely appreciate. Thank you to all of our Halton community who supports the festival, both virtually and in person. We appreciate you. And of course, thank you to the viewers who are here. We do this for you to enjoy these films and to look at local and international talent. Now, the viewers, I have a favor of you. Two favors, actually. One is if you can please vote for your favorite films, but you can actually vote for all the films. So you can just give it a rating from 1 to 5, 1 being a lower score, 5 being the best. And that will just really help us, with the Audience Choice Award. So if you could please do that, you can vote for each short and each feature that you watch. Second favor, if you'd like to get engaged in this Q&A, you can post your questions in our chat and they'll be sent here and I can ask our filmmakers any of your questions that you might have. So we'd love you to get involved. So please do. If not, I got lots of questions, but if you have any questions, we're definitely grateful for those. All right, so let's introduce our wonderful guests. First off, we have James Smith. Hi, James.
Hello.
We have James here all the way from Germany. He is here at like 1 a.m. Thank you so much for being here. It's like 7:30 at night, pretty normal hour, and you're staying up to meet us, but thank you so much. James brought us the wonderful short film, Animals Habitat, which was so well put for this category, just animal conservation and sustainability and, some of the choices that humans are making and maybe having regrets over. I'll introduce Darrell Varga next. Darrell, hello. Thanks for being here. Darrell is our director for Bread in the Bones. Thank you for joining us all the way from Nova Scotia. And thank you for sharing this story. We'll divulge and break the bread open a little bit more as we go. Next, I want to introduce Andrew Nisker. Andrew Nisker is our director for Coral Ghosts. And what a story, such a relevant topic. I just, the imagery, everything, and the information. And then we have wonderful Dr. Thomas Goreau, who's here with us. So great to see you, so great to meet you. And thank you for sharing this family story. It's a worldwide story, but yet it felt so personal and we felt like we got a piece of your family and we got to see into that. So thank you everyone for joining us. We are so grateful to have you. Let's get right into it. Maybe James, we can start with you and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience with claymation.
Claymation is always quite a challenge. The sculpting, the editing, the animating, it all comes together and, you're working with tiny spaces and tiny characters and in the end, there are endless possibilities, endless creative freedom. And that's what I love about claymation and stop motion in general. That you can basically do everything.
And you're doing it with your hand, which is, it's funny, it's similar to bread, right? You have to put your hands in there, get dirty. And even in Coral Ghosts, you got to get in there and get dirty to get to the real joy and to the passion of it all. Seeing even like that there were fingerprints on that. And it's like, there's hands made that. And it's so cool to see, because I think we see film in so many different ways, but love claymation, love what you brought to us. Now with the last scene, that was so powerful, showing, this huge gorilla that, is obviously a predator for us. You couldn't win a fight with a gorilla as a human. And then it's in a cage and we're looking at it. And it's, I think humans sometimes get confused. They think that we think we're the apex predator, but we are not. There are many more powerful forces. Now, with that scene, was that always supposed to be the final scene of it? Maybe did you have an alternate ending, or was maybe that the original idea for it?
Yeah, it's several different endings, and I always try to mix and looked out for what could fit best at the as an ending. But I stuck with the gorilla because I thought, it's also mostly related to the human species, and it's like we're killing ourselves, like a symbolism. And yeah, of course, the illegal poaching factor is always quite important to me, that needs to stop immediately. And yeah, I think it ended on a high note. I thought, yeah.
And I'm glad you said that about with gorillas. They are our closest, animal, our closest cousin, if you will. And I think that's, the entire theme of this genre today, that we think we're different, but we are all the same. We are all humans. We are all earthlings. We're all on the same planet. We need the same thing. We need sun, we need water, we need food. And somehow along our journey in our lives, there's been a disconnect, and we put each other in different boxes, but remembering that we are all the same, we are all family. And if we're not protecting our habitat, maybe you're not having children, but the rest of the world is, and we are all family. We have to look out for it. And I just love that theme was so constant with all the films. Andrew, I'd love to chat with you a little bit about Coral Ghosts and telling the story. Maybe you can tell us how you and Tom got together to bring us this story.
Sure. Before I do, I just want to thank you, Alita, and Wendy for programming the film and for hosting this tonight. I also want to thank our funders. It's really important to acknowledge that the film would not have been made without the support of the POV program at the Canadian Media Fund, the Rogers Telefund, and Ontario Creates, along with Rifkin Asset Management and some of our private supporters. So it was really exciting to get the story to the world, and it was a pretty easy sell, actually, when I told Tom's story to everybody. Everyone kind of really saw an incredible film in there. Tom and I met on my previous film called Ground War, where I was looking at the impact of pesticides on human health, but also on the environment. And one of the places I was curious to see was runoff of pesticides and how that affected corals. Tom had been doing some work in Guana Cay in the Bahamas to work with the local community to help fight back a developer who wanted to build a golf course beside their pristine coral reefs. And their coral reefs were sort of the lifeblood of their economic activity there. The diving was a big thing there. And so they were very worried about this golf course coming in and the runoff destroying the coral reefs and destroying their diving industry. And so it was a unique situation, and Tom had been there years beforehand, before they even built this development, because the golf course did go in, and he had baseline studies about the corals, and we brought him back down for the film to see how the golf course impacted the coral reef. And that's where Tom and I spent a few days together, and he told me the story about his father and his grandfather, and I was so enamored with it. I said, I really want to try and make a film, and that's what happened. Maybe Tom has something to add.
Well, we didn't have any of the Bahamas footage in the movie, but we could have filmed in 20 or 50 or 100 other places and seen essentially the same story of reefs that are being destroyed by human greed, by different mechanisms in different places. But it's all about the money. It's that people destroy beautiful habitats and they profit from from that so-called development. And that's the story we've seen every place. And in the movie, we only had time to cover the Great Barrier Reef, Indonesia, Bikini Atoll, and Jamaica. A little bit also in the Canadian Arctic. That's another story. But at any rate, I mean, we could have gone to another 20 or 50 other countries and
Yes.
unfortunately,
For sure.
yeah, they're dying in different ways, but they're all dying every place we look. It's a huge issue.
One of the interesting things is that, I discovered that there are corals almost everywhere. People think of tropical corals, but, I learned a lot more about coral systems in other areas of the world. Even in Canada, up in the Arctic, there were corals, many, many eons ago. So it's really very fascinating to learn about that.
Yes, I mean, that part was so cool. I mean, yes, the tropical corals is such a stereotype. You think that they only exist there, but they're everywhere, and they need to be protected. And Tom, you showing us that physical evidence. I think so many people need physical evidence to believe something, right? Seeing is believing. And you have these time capsules of what coral reefs are supposed to look like. And you brought us all this coral science. And I mean, you taught me so much already. And I have such high hopes for this film. I think it's not just, a film to teach the younger generation. It's to teach every generation. And I think it can sometimes be lost. I think sometimes you get to a certain age and maybe you're looking at mortality and you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to be around for it. But it's the next generation. And, have we thought about bringing this film into maybe a more educational platform, sharing it with, youth marine biologists or anything like of that sort?
Oh yeah, I mean, we've COVID put a damper in our release, but I mean, with all my films, I try and build educational components around them, learning resource kits, getting the next generation involved, and it's super important to me because I have young children to see, and that's really why I make my films, is really to ensure that the world's, like a good camper, that the world's left better than I found it. Like the campsite's always left better than when you arrived. So that's the point of making our films, and especially, with corals that are so abstract to most people most people never go under the water or dive or go into the ocean like we saw in Jamaica. Even the Jamaicans themselves were shocked to see what was there. And it's really fascinating. And now with technology and with the ability to connect with people like Tom, who've been doing this for decades, for his whole life, to bring the bigger picture, the bigger story together, and show photos from decades ago, from the 1950s, the 1960s, of these coral reef systems that no longer exist, really was an opportunity cinematically. I thought that was important and a great way to teach, kids and everybody, of course.
Of course. I love that connection between, human interference and letting Mother Nature just do what it needs to do. Well, I think the sad reality is we do have to intervene now because we've damaged, Mother Nature so much so that we do need to intervene. And the electricity with the corals, I thought that was so interesting. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more and maybe dumb it down a little bit, how you were able to send, electricity through those beautiful structures in Indonesia. In Bali, that would
all over the we've done. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the sound's on. Right, we've done it all over the world. We often use solar panels, but we can use any form of electricity. People, of course, are freaked out about electrical currents in salt water for good reasons because they're used to dangerous levels. But they forget the very basis of all life is electrical currents. That's how we make our biochemical energy, or electrical currents flowing through our cells and our membranes. And so there's a certain level where electrical currents are very beneficial to our health. And we're operating in that range. So it's not just corals we stimulate. We stimulate oysters, seagrass, salt marsh, every marine ecosystem. And so the key is that we're now able to regenerate any marine ecosystem and the ecosystem services and biodiversity where we choose to do that. And it's, in the movie, Andrew only got a chance to use less than 1% of what he filmed. So what's left unused is an incredible educational treasure trove. But I mean, the point is about the electricity, though, is that we can regenerate these ecosystems. If we don't really have any way to get out of the climate change problem without, losing our coastlines, runaway warming, all that sort of thing. And in a sense, it's our survival is based on regenerating all our ecosystems. Coral reefs are the first to go, and they're going to be the hardest to save, but we know how to do it. The thing is that if we used what we knew, the problems could be solved. The problem is that we don't have this sort of political leadership that follows science. They don't,
And that's such a necessary part in making change and making things happen. It's getting these policies in place and raising our voices and asking, and not asking, but demanding these things to be changed. And films like these create awareness and make people give a hoot about it. We do have an audience question. I guess this is for you, Andrew. What special things do you need to take into consideration when shooting the corals underwater?
Well, I really wish our cinematographer was here, because I sort of let him do his thing. If I was shooting it, it probably would have ended up being just murky and black. But from what I understand, the challenges to shooting underwater really are light, and light is different underwater, and getting your cameras properly balanced in different environments. And of course, there's always the challenges of ensuring that you have good equipment that doesn't leak, that can travel on our budgets. I mean, we're going to places like Indonesia, Australia, flying from Canada. It's super expensive to bring lots of equipment. So having really good compact equipment. I was just reading about the rovers on Mars, the rovers on the moon, when they drove around on those buggies on the moon. How they had to redesign the buggy that I think it weighed as much as an astronaut. One buggy was considered the weight of an astronaut, yet these machines took them over 50 miles around the moon. And so it's the same thing for us. We had to, bringing the equipment packages down. We could only bring enough equipment really to weigh as much as a person or two, because we couldn't afford to bring all that stuff with us. So but the technology allows us to do that, and got us underwater. And also Tom's grandfather was the pioneer in shooting underwater and capturing these images for the first time using waterproof boxes. And there was a lot of inspiration looking at those photos, going back to those places and trying to reframe them and refine these places underwater so many decades later. And I really felt like we succeeded in a lot of cases, especially in Jamaica, to find those spots and those angles to kind of match those photos before and after to really see the impact. And I think those are some of the most powerful sequences to show the differences of what's going on underwater after all these decades.
The power of the image is so incredible. That you can see something and feel something, and you can see something and smell something or taste something. Darrell, we'll segue into you.
It sounded like a segue.
It was. That first scene when you see that crispy bread right in the beginning, and you've got this sexy jazz going on. I could smell the bread, I could feel the bread, and even that's just music and your eyes, and you're able to create this connection, and you almost got like a foreshadowing of how you were going to feel watching the film. Tell us a little bit about some of those shots and choosing what started that film for you.
Well, a lot of different things, and those opening shots came very late because I couldn't get my head around the introduction to this film. In fact, I went through at least a half a dozen. I do have a minute or so underwater in this film, and I will say, waterproof. I fried the GoPro camera on those shots, so that was an expensive day, and not hard to do, just a hair in the water seal. But yeah, those opening shots, they're really trying to get inside the bread, because bread is inside us, and the idea of the film is that bread, this simple and for many people kind of inconsequential thing on the dinner table, kind of the background of everyday life. I wanted it to be in the foreground, so that's what the opening macro photography shots are, and it's a film, you know, about storytelling. It's informed by these important political issues about the earth and the need to act differently on it, but it takes a different path. It's a film that is about storytelling and art making and you know, the way bread shapes the story of you know, human life for the last 10,000 years in most parts of the world. It's in our bones, as my title suggests, but I was also going to give the other origin of that title. Didn't make it into the film, but in around the middle 16th, 17th, 18th century in numerous areas of Europe, when there was a shortage of wheat, flour ground from wheat, bakers would typically throw in a lot of different things, including ground up human bones or bones from various origins. So we are literally, you know, we have consumed our bones. In a previous film, I was interested in the question of how we are, you know, how the dust from faraway galaxies, stardust, is also in our body. And with this film, it comes a little closer. The bones.
I love that. I mean, there were so many themes in the film. It could have probably been a series, and I say the same for Coral Ghost. They could both have been series in itself and not just a film. Darrell, were there other surprising things that you saw with these testimonials from all these passionate bread lovers? Maybe different things that you weren't expecting to feel in interviewing these folks?
Well, I wanted people who have a passion. There are, you know, thousands upon thousands of excellent bakers in the world, but not all of them are storytellers because they tell their story in what they create in their hands. And I needed, this is the challenge for any filmmaker, to find the stories that can drive a film in a kind of emotional arc, and finding the people who can tell that. So really, when I knew I had the film, it was when I spent a couple of days, as far back as 2013, in Vermont at the Bread and Puppet Theater, which also comes right after, well, which comes throughout the film, but is right after the opening title sequence. This amazing place, a kind of throwback to an earlier time of art making as a kind of communal agrarian process where bread is baked and puppet shows are made with gigantic, bigger than life puppets and other, you know, analog objects. And when the show is over, the audience is fed the bread. There's no admission charged, and the bread feeds our bellies as the artwork feeds our mind and our imagination. And when I was there, I realized, first of all, this is a really special place. And yes, there is a film here. My job is to now find a way to incorporate Bread and Puppet, but not make it a film just about them, but to find a different story. And, you know, about 7 years later, I ended up in what appears to be a bread making zeitgeist. I'm not a zeitgeist kind of guy, but how it worked out.
One thing I loved in the film was, I can't remember who it was, but there's the word company comes from compane, bread. And, you know, you look at this year that we've had and how many people decided baking bread was going to be the hobby of the year. And I was like, is it because we're lonely and we just wanted to break bread with someone? And what an aha moment. I mean, did you do you yourself bake a lot of bread as well? And
I am obsessive, but I cooked for a long time in my life before I started exploring bread. And it first of all, it was a challenge, something to try to, I don't like the word master. It's because it's a relationship. it's a living thing after all. And actually, as an aside, I found that the bread was often better when I left it alone. It kind of does its own thing, this, burping and farting, yeast as it's moving through, interacting with the gluten in the dough. But it's hugely therapeutic and pleasurable, and especially to make bread for other people. Pre-COVID, you would get invited to more people's homes because they would come on over and, oh, by the way, can you bring some of that bread? So, it is, especially for those of us who might be a bit socially awkward, it is the social glue, but food always is that. And that's, in a sense, that's the story. Bread is the item in this film because it's wonderful and diverse and fascinating, but you could say the same thing about lots of other foods, that it really is the metaphor of life and company and socialization, and when you make it by hand, it takes time and it takes human labor. It's analog, right? In this, like claymation, in this digital time, you have to slow down and wait for the yeast. And if it's sourdough, it's going to be overnight, and that's okay. My family is accustomed to, when we run out of bread, okay, I'll make some, but it'll be ready in 2 days. So.
And you got to be patient for it, and it's going to taste that much better, right?
We have hungry for a while.
What's that?
But you will have to wait.
Yeah. We have another audience question. I am a scuba diver. I have seen the Great Barrier Reef. How quickly are these reefs declining? I have heard horror stories about the bleaching of reefs. Can they actually be repaired, and how long will this take?
Yes, well, let me just say, earlier this week, UNESCO announced that the Great Barrier Reef was in danger of losing its World Heritage status because it was in such bad condition, that most of the corals were dead, and this has happened over a long period of time. Now, this is 71 years after my grandfather took the first underwater photos of the Great Barrier Reef, between the first being shown and there to being declared essentially functionally dead almost. So, there's still plenty of coral in places, don't get me wrong, but the decline is very strong. But the thing is that in fact, most of the Great Barrier Reef was killed by pollution coming from land before global warming became a problem. But both were allowed in effect to go out of control because people were in denial. They were busy making money off the reef, and they didn't really care to manage it properly. They made up stories about it being a paradise. And now they're coming back. The answer is, can they be repaired? Yes. What we do in Indonesia could be done in Australia, but they've never allowed us to do it. So, it's for the wrong reasons, but if they would let us help them from Indonesia, yes, we could help them, but up to now that hasn't happened at all, unfortunately. So they're running out of time very quickly. And, it's mostly gone, it's sad to say.
And, and to see the after effects, the Australian wildfires that they're now having consequentially, and, these things are happening, and yet these sirens aren't being heard by the people who need to be hearing these sirens. So we are in desperate need of these stories that you guys are telling us and creating that awareness. And, I hope everyone gets a chance to see this film and realize, we're at a point of, it's not a suggestion anymore, right? It's a desperate need, because if trees were just falling down around us, maybe people would pay more attention. But as you said, coral is like the trees. They provide food and shelter for all for habitats and everything. So just wild. And I think having passion for creating a sustainable lifestyle, you have to be a forever optimist, and just eternally optimistic that things are going to happen, and every little bit helps. And if you share it with someone, and then that person shares it with someone, and then they share it, it becomes a chain effect. And it can start here with film. So thank you so much for that. Andrew, maybe you want to share any other connections about the ocean, maybe some upcoming ocean films?
Well, we are through making the film with Tom. We had the privilege of going to the Marshall Islands and spending time with the people of the Bikini Atoll, who no longer haven't lived on the Bikini Atoll itself since they were removed by the United States to test nuclear weapons. And through meeting them, we formed a friendship, and they've been basically living in exile for the last 70 plus years on a small island, which doesn't allow them to live their traditional life anymore. They live off rations. They've become rather a lot of them have become unhealthy, diabetic, because they're not living a traditional lifestyle. And in addition to that, they're all suffering health effects from being exposed to over 28 nuclear weapons being exploded within their vicinity, some which drop fallout on them. And so they asked, and I obliged to try and help them make a film about their story. And luckily enough, we were able to secure funding for that, and that's what we're about to shoot. The interesting part about that story, too, it's not only about the history, but it's about today, because where they live now is now being inundated by global sea level rise. And their islands are becoming flooded, and they will be forced to move very soon. So really, the world's first nuclear refugees are now becoming one of the world's first climate change refugees. So it's a very tragic story, but it's a very big analogy to our planet and what we've done to it.
Wow. Wow. Just crazy. Now the Bikini Atoll, the part about radiation, am I correct in saying it's more radioactive than Chernobyl? I think I read that somewhere.
I can't specifically say that, but we were on the atoll filming, and you're encouraged not to eat or drink anything within the area. But apparently, you can stay there. People can stay there for a little while, but it's definitely very radioactive. And a lot of the waste from all the tests that have gone on in the region have also been buried in a dome nearby Bikini, on an island called Brunet. And that dome itself today is being flooded by sea water. It's cracking, and they're very worried about the radiation and the contamination floating back into the ocean from that. So I mean, it's a pretty stunning story, but as we get deeper into the research of that story, we're learning that globally, that most all the big superpowers did similar things to indigenous populations. In the South Pacific, the French did the same thing in Polynesia. The French did similar things in Algeria. Also, the Soviets did the same things in Kazakhstan, and the U.S. were also, and the British in Australia in the outback to the Aboriginal people. So it's just really a really incredible story. And if it wasn't for Tom and his grandfather, I probably would have stumbled across that story. Become so enamored. And I'm hoping that Tom will join us, because the sea level story and the climate change story there is vitally important. And one of the things is that Tom's BioRock work can really make a difference to help slow down at least the islands, hopefully maybe even save the islands from sinking into the sea. So we're really hoping Tom can be engaged in that too with us.
Well, Tom, you seem like you've had your challenges trying to get maybe certain communities on board, or policies changed, or just maybe countries in allowing the research to be had about coral science. This leads into an audience question. Tom, is it challenging then to get a lot of world countries to use your technology to improve reefs? So you already said that Australia, you had some difficulty. Other countries, same difficulty as well?
Well, we work very bottom up. We tend to work with fishing communities and local communities, indigenous people where we can. So essentially, if we have their approval, we can do what we want if we're helping them, and that's the way we approach it. If we try to do it top down, there are immediate obstacles. They demand lots of money, lots of permits, legal fees, blah blah. And the more legalistic the country is, the more impossible it is to do anything. So I very much prefer to work with small, isolated communities that have a problem. They've lived there all their life. They remember how it was. They want to fix it, and they don't want to leave. Now, the bikini people may be forced to leave. That's a tragedy, but they don't want to. They want to hold on to what they have as much as they can. Now, the problem is there's never been funding from the top down. The funding has gone to, say, declaring marine parks. Marine parks don't protect reefs from dying. So we have all these marine parks that are full of dead and dying coral reefs. So, they're not addressing the root issues. And if we don't change that quickly, we're in deep trouble, because it's not just reefs that are dying. All our coastal ecosystems are dying from pollution, from climate change, from one thing or another. And so we're losing our fisheries, we're losing our beaches, we're going to lose our land and all our coastal communities in relatively short order. So if the window of opportunity to reverse this is very small, it's closing rapidly. In principle, if we used everything we knew at the same time, it could just be done. If we waste more time, we've lost the last 30 years because politicians just were in denial. They lied and denied, and they made up fake explanations, and so they prevented any action when it could have made a difference. Now it's not quite too late, but it will be very soon if we don't really force immediate action on the world, all the governments of the world. Now, I think the good thing is that there's beginnings to be mechanisms for the Green Climate Fund of the United Nations. And this week, they're supposed to form the United Nations Blue Climate Fund to deal with marine issues. That's sort of been an orphan issue. So we're hoping that at the next UN Climate Change Conference, they will announce mechanisms of funding that can help people like Bikini Atoll before it's too late. But really, they need help in the next few years, or it will be too late.
Now, you've traveled so much. Is there, a country that is like a really great example of how to protect coral reef life? Is there one that's like, what, they're doing a lot of steps, we need to do a bit more of that? Who's the best kid in the class?
No, I couldn't really say that, because the fact is the reefs are dying for reasons that are beyond their control. Global warming, new diseases, and things that come from very far away. So even if they were to do all the right things, and I mean, some countries have done a pretty good job of managing their local stress. Some have done a very good job, but it hasn't helped them in the way that you'd think, because of what's coming in from the outside. So it is truly a global problem. So even those that are claimed to be doing well really aren't, if you knew how their reefs used to be. But for the most part, the people making these claims don't know how their own reefs used to be, because they never saw them.
And they do, they seem to be so resilient, and there's, infinite potential, right?
They're the most vulnerable of ecosystems, and we've been saying that from the very beginning. We always said they're not resilient, they're the most vulnerable, but all ecosystems are vulnerable, and we're destroying all of them. And, essentially, if we don't reverse this, we don't save all the other ecosystems, we can't save reefs, but reefs are going to be essentially the first to go, and they're on the edge right now. We're just trying to save the last of them.
And you know what? Education, I think, is the biggest step of it. And once we have, educated folks who know about the problem, then it works upward and making those changes. But it can start at home with you. To all of our viewers who are watching, if there's something that maybe you can do in your own life to, assist in creating a more sustainable environment, it does make a difference. You might just think it's something so small, but if everyone does something a little bit, we're going to be on our path to saving our planet. I love it here. I love this planet. I feel grateful to live here and live in this country. For Canada is just beautiful, but we need to protect it. And we love these stories that you filmmakers share with us, and you teach us so much. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Thank you.
I have one little funny question, I suppose. The pumpernickel, Darrell, James, you're from Germany, so you have to myth bust. Does pumpernickel actually mean the devil's fart?
I'm not sure.
It's
I thought
in
that
the
was so
film.
funny. What's that, Darrell?
It's in the film, and the film is a documentary.
I love that.
So tautologically speaking, there are different dialects as well, and I did try to double check that, and it seemed right to me.
It was great. I love
And
that.
there's the truth of storytelling, right?
Of course, everything gets passed down. There's also so many dialects and impressions of how we interpret things. But one thing we can interpret for sure is these were all amazing films, and you're all so talented, and we definitely want to see some more work from you guys. We are going to wrap things up, but I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you, James, for sharing your late night with us, and for chatting a bit about your wonderful film, Animals Habitat, with your claymation talent. We loved having you here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Darrell, for sharing the bread and the bones. I think most of us will look at bread differently and see that life is about sharing, and which brings us into the coral ghost, that we need to share our knowledge to be better and to make tomorrow better. And thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Thomas, for being here today. We wish you the most success with your films, and I hope everyone gets out and sees this. I hope everyone at home shares these films and passes it on. Lots of great stuff. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Alita. I just want to add one quick thing, that if you missed Coral Ghosts and you miss it during the festival, it is on CBC Documentary Channel, and it will be on CBC Gem starting mid-August. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again for having us. We really appreciate it.
Perfect. Don't forget
Well, then Bread and the Bones is on iTunes, or Apple TV as they call it now.
Excellent.
Yeah, and you can watch parts of my films on my Instagram and on my YouTube channel. And thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to have you all. Viewers, please don't forget to vote for your Audience Choice Award. We'd love to have those votes in. Thank you so much. And we've got lots more films coming this week. And this is it for me for OFFA 2021 Virtual Film Festival, day number 3. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.